Welcome to Rantzerker number 12. You'd be nothing without feminism, babe. We are going to be reviewing how stuff works, things that your mother never told you. In particular, this one, Karen, help me out here. What's the name of this one?
It's what has feminism accomplished?
And what we have to feel obligated towards feminism for as women.
Yes, we need to thank it. You wouldn't be nothing without me, baby.
Yeah.
I'll give you everything you got.
Exactly. It puts me in mind of that particular song about the cocktail waitress and the guy who supposedly found her and cleaned her up and took her from nothing and gave her everything she's got, and then says, "I can put you back. I can put you back at any point."
I don't remember that song. Huh.
I'll have to find the details, the deets, and show it to you, because it definitely sort of, there's some parallels there.
Yeah, no, it's very much it's sort of, the whole thing is typified by Chank's admonition that, thank the suffragettes or give up or stop voting and make me a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah.
Let's get this thing started. So you have the link?
I do. I'm gonna screen share.
And for those of you who think that I last episode, I'll just witter away while Karen is doing that. Last episode, you said that I sounded annoyed. I'm not annoyed at Karen. I'm just looking at this and seeing, oh my God, we have like 5 more minutes of this shit to go. I just want to get through it.
People thought you were annoyed at me?
Yeah, at least one person who was like, "Oh my God, Alison sounds like someone who just wants to listen to herself talk." Well, I'm not annoyed at Karen's input. I'm just like, sometimes I'm like, I just want to get through this. It's just my nature.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so do a screen share there.
I
show to everyone.
I am screen sharing. Is it not showing up?
There should be a tab that says show to everyone. Yeah, I know.
Doing exactly what I was doing the last time.
For some reason, last time it didn't work. It just showed like a letterboxed. So I don't want to do that again, because I want people to see the full effect of this fucking shit.
Okay,
screen.
It just.
Okay, well, no, wait. I think it's working. Yeah, you're doing it right.
Okay, now there's gonna be a delay, and okay.
All right,
and fucking stupid Skype notifications, get out of my fucking way.
Yeah, they put them in the most annoying place too.
It's the worst possible fucking place, and you can't move them.
All right, so I think this is good. I think we're ready.
Okay, all right, I'm playing now.
Yes.
Oh, hey everybody. It is not even lunchtime when I'm shooting this video, and feminism has already treated me like a queen. Thanks to feminism.
Oh.
Like this is like, so feminism treats women like royalty. All women everywhere. It treats all women everywhere like royalty, and that's okay. That's actually what women deserve, to be treated like a queen, to be treated like royalty.
Okay, but just to get back to the dictionary definition of feminism, does feminism treat men like royalty? I would have to say no, but I want to hear your thoughts, Karen.
No, I think feminism treats men like royalty that needs to be brought down a peg, or 2 or 100 or 2,500 pegs. Right? It sees men as if they're royalty, the whole male privilege thing, whatever, right? So men are like treated like just absolutely like gods in our society, according to feminism. And then, yeah, we got to bring them down a peg or bring women up to that, when in reality, men aren't treated like that at all. So essentially, like, it all comes down to the question that I have been asked, why didn't you take advantage of all of those things when you were going through your divorce? Why didn't you take advantage of that? Why didn't you get what you could get? Right? And I said, and I have always said, and I will continue to say, I do not define justice solely as whatever benefits me.
Yep. Oh yeah. I have nothing more to say on this issue.
All right, so let's get
Except
on.
that, can I just be a bitch for a second? Can I just be a bit of a cunt?
Yes.
What is her lower half of her face doing?
I think she's just one of those people that just has a very, very expressive, you know,
Lower half?
well, even her entire face is extremely expressive.
Well, I guess that's good. And it's at least she's an animated. That's a positive. I mean, it's better than a lot of the feminists that I've seen. I mean, usually we don't show the ones that are really dead-eyed.
Yeah.
They look like they're freaking zombies. That's sort of scary. Usually those are the male feminists.
Yeah.
But so at least she looks like there's something in there.
Yeah. Lots of emotion.
Okay, there you go.
Without a kid,
She woke up without a kid.
Wow. Do you need to call the police?
Yeah, no, I'm just like,
Report a kidnapping?
it's like the whole idea that women have always had the option of not having kids. They just don't get married.
No, and if they do get married, there has been birth control around since like the 60s, and that was not really, I don't think that was feminism that got birth control.
Well, feminism are the people who rushed it to the market, who applied so much political pressure that the pharmaceutical companies developing the pill rushed it to the market to the point where it had not been adequately tested, and there were numerous cases of stroke and deep vein thrombosis and breast cancer and all kinds of stuff that were eventually attributed to it. And that's essentially the reason why those warnings for stroke and deep vein thrombosis are still on your birth control pill labels. It's not because those particular pills, provide any significant risk of that. It's that the first pills to hit the market because of all of that public pressure by feminists to rush it to market, they had not been adequately tested. So yeah.
Thank you, feminism.
Thanks, feminism, for all those women who died.
And by the way, the people who are really responsible for the birth control pill, I'm guessing they're the majority male chemists who created it. So yeah. Thank you, patriarchy. Thank you for caring about women not having to give birth if they don't want to. Patriarchy. Yeah. That's thank you. You thank feminism for rushing it so that it didn't go out with proper controls, but you can thank probably the mostly male chemists who created it and the institutions, the mostly male institutions who funded it for its actual existence.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's not like there wasn't birth control prior to feminism. There were condoms, or as they called them for a while, they're French letters. There were sea sponges soaked in vinegar as a spermicide. There were all kinds of ways that women could avoid getting pregnant. And then on top of that, it wasn't in most Western countries, it wasn't until the emergence of feminism that anybody cared anything at all about abortion. It used to be called by the interesting euphemism of bringing on menses, just bringing on a woman's period. So essentially, like, that was not illegal until after feminism came on the scene in most Western countries.
I'd also like to add that it was some feminist or suffragettes who were against birth control because they said it would give men license to walk away from their progeny. And so they were against it because it might. What the heck is going on in the background there, Karen?
Your mic is going all robotic.
Oh, okay, that's me. All right, just go ahead. I don't have to say anymore.
Okay, I'm just wondering if you can fix your headphones or put your old ones back on, maybe.
You think that's what it is?
These ones were new. So, all right, I'm gonna just play a little more.
For a very long distance.
Oh my God, it is me.
Oh Jesus! Oh my goodness. Well, let's ask the chat. This is always the fun part, huh? Hey, chat, is it me or is it Karen that's having the problem? Is it me or Karen, chat? Chat, please help us out here. This is always a group effort on County Badger Radio. It's always some audience participation going on because, well, let's face it, the technology that we're dealing with is sort of, I don't want to say it's primitive because it's not primitive, but it's Google, and Google likes to screw us up. So, chat, tell us, is it me or Karen that's having the problem? Which one of us needs to do something? It's Karen. All right, it's you, Karen. In an astounding upset, an astounding turn of events, it is not me and my Saskatchewan Vole internet. It is you, Karen.
All right. Well, okay.
Might I suggest the incredible number of tabs that you have open may be a problem?
Probably not. But I'm going to leave the call. I'm going to restart my computer. It should only take about 2.5 minutes.
Oh, great.
Okay.
So everybody who complains that I talk too damn much is going to have even more ammunition.
There you go. You sing a song and entertain them. I'll be right back.
I'm not going to sing a song, but I will attempt to entertain you while Karen is gone. So in terms of birth control, the original suffragettes, there were, I don't know how many of them, but at least one spoke out against birth control because she felt that it would give men license to walk away from their children. I mean, it was okay that birth control would give women license to not have children, but the real problem was that men might get it in their mind that they had the right to abdicate parenthood as well, or even demand that a woman not give birth if they didn't want the child. So their objection to birth control was that it might give men more reproductive freedom. This, needless to say, this is definitely not commiserate with the equality definition of feminism in the dictionary. It sounds a little bit, what's the right word for that? It sounds a little bit vindictive, to not want women to have the right to have children, or to not want women to have the right to choose when they can have children, because that might it might have the littlest amount of chance that might also give men the right to decide not to have children. And anyway, so I guess that would qualify more as an example of feminists wanting to hurt women in order to hurt men, or wanting to prevent women from benefiting if men actually benefit as well. You just have the slimmest potential chance of benefiting from women's reproductive control. Yeah, if men have the slimmest potential chance of benefiting from women's reproductive control, the suffragettes, or at least a few of them were, or one of them was against it. All right, that definitely gives lie to the idea that feminism is responsible either for birth control or women's reproductive options. Well, I mean, I guess in general, feminism or suffragettes might have been for it. I mean, after all, there is the history of eugenics in the suffragette movement. In other words, they were proponents of birth control as long as it was applied to the undesirable populations, such as the mentally deficient, such as, okay, you're back. Thank fuck. Because I was getting tired of listening to myself.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm just going to find the place where we were. I'm just going to, fucking video ads.
Oh my God.
It's not even before. By my morning coffee, not to.
All right. Well, we were about 10 seconds in. Like we got minimal way in before we started to spurg.
Yeah. Okay.
Which reminds me, we probably should
double check.
Minimize the spurging because this is a 7-minute video. Otherwise, we're going to be here till like 5.
Okay. Entire screen.
Okay. Why am I not seeing you? Oh, there we go.
I'm
seeing you now.
All right. Now I'm going to go over here.
There we go. Let's let the spurg flow.
Okay. Here we go.
Without a kid, I went jogging for a very long distance, not to brag, and no one slammed me up against the wall and said, "What are you doing? Your uterus is going to explode if you keep moving like that." I was able.
Okay. Who does that?
I don't think that would have ever been done in history. First of all, if a man put his hands on a woman in such a manner, he'd probably get his ass beat throughout most of human history.
Yeah.
At least the immediate history that we're talking about, like that. But it's hyperbole for the sake of comedy, so we can excuse that.
Well, okay, but what gets me too, right, is that like your average woman's daily life would have involved much more physical exercise just on a daily basis. Just, I have to ask this woman, right? Has she ever actually rolled up a carpet, hauled it outside, slung it over a clothesline, and beaten it for an hour with a carpet beater? Has she ever had to do that just to keep her house clean? Right? Has she ever had to use a laundry mangle, or before those were invented, wash her clothes on a rock on the side of the river and then wring them out by hand and then hang them? Has she ever had to do that? Has she ever had to flip a mattress, a feather mattress, a heavy feather mattress over, every couple of months to keep mildew from forming in the mattress? Right? Has she ever had to do any of that kind of work? That was just typical housework for a woman who ran a house with a husband and children in it up until 100 years ago, right? That's just how things were done for the average woman, right? That's not even getting into, like I did in my ad, that 4th century Ukrainian peasant woman who was like out in the field with a hoe and breaking the ground so that she could plant fucking turnips, and then pulling the turnips out of the ground and hauling them in a wheelbarrow, if she was lucky enough to own one, in a sack on her back if she wasn't, to the big pile of turnips, in the root cellar, right? Like, does this woman even know how women lived before the modern age, and that no man in his right mind would think that that he should stop that peasant woman and say, "What are you doing? You're too fragile to do this kind of work. You're too fragile to endure this level of exercise."
Well, I mean, this is, and even in the Victorian times, when there was a significant middle class of women who were basically, actually in the Victorian times, women were probably the biggest employers because they controlled the household, and the household had multiple staff to deal with all the various, gardening, food preparation, cleaning, and whatever else, probably even dealing with animals. So she would, even in that time, there was still an aesthetic that women would take a genteel exercise like bicycling and walking. I don't know about jogging, because, to be frank, I don't even think the men could jog in the get-ups that they wore.
Well,
they probably could barely move.
Not the upper class men, but I mean, the lower class men, back in that time, in the 14, 15, 16, 1700s. I mean, one of the most wonderful jobs a man could have was as a litter bearer. He literally would he would have to grab 2 poles. It was like a taxi cab. It was the taxi cab of the day, right? And people would get into it, and it would be suspended on 2 poles, and you'd have one guy at the front and one guy at the back, and they would carry these people from place to place in the cities. That's what a lot of men did for a living, right? It's like she's saying that this feminism that treats her like a queen, okay, treats her like aristocracy, is now allowing her to exercise the way peasants had to exercise, and in ways that the aristocracy didn't have to.
Well, I mean, they didn't have to, but they did. Like, it was probably fairly common for aristocratic women to go on hunts,
yes,
and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, they did. They would ride. They would ride when bicycles were invented. They would do that. They they did all kinds of stuff to get physical activity in. that's how you stay fit. I think they even, they recognized that right from the word go. Now, that doesn't mean that women wanted to appear muscly, right? But the reason they didn't want to appear muscly was because peasants were muscly.
Yeah, and peasants are revolting. Like us, Karen. Me and you are peasants, and we're revolting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely revolting. All right, let's continue.
Able to buy my morning coffee with my very own credit card in my very own name, which I wasn't legally allowed to do until 1964.
Because your husband was responsible for your debts until after 1964, because that legal change wasn't legislated like your legal change was. No, that legal change came as a result through case law, right? When women got their own credit cards in their own names, and then their husbands were held responsible for their debts, right? And then finally, judges started to say, that doesn't really seem fair. Maybe we shouldn't hold this man responsible for a debt owing to a credit card his wife was able to get in her own name, because now it's against the law for a bank to refuse her to get a credit card in her own name. Maybe we should stop holding men responsible for this. That's how that change came about. Your change came about because somehow, some way, in a financial and legal climate where men were held responsible, either your husband or your brother or your father, for everything in your life, everything that you needed, including repayment of debts that you entered into freely, right, without their permission. They were held responsible for your debts. That was just mean, arbitrary sexism.
Okay.
Fuck.
Well, but also, weren't credit cards like invented in the 50s?
Well, she's not just talking about credit cards. She's talking about mortgages and things like that as well. Women have been actually in the US and Canada, they have had the legal right to enter into contracts anywhere from the 1890s to the 1910s. That was when women gained that right, that yes, you can, right? And so it wasn't illegal for women to do that. Women weren't barred from doing that. But because of this arrangement where women could not be held legally responsible, ultimately, they were not considered to be the ultimate obligors on their debts, right? It was some man somewhere who was related to them or who had married them. Banks often chose, right, to demand a male cosigner. What man is going to be responsible for this debt? So that when you default, if and when you default on this debt, we don't have to go through a long, excruciating court process to assign responsibility to
a man. Okay, so and here's the thing. Here's my question. So for a certain amount of time, after women were able to get credit cards, the men in their lives were responsible for paying them.
Yep.
And even prior to the credit cards, that women could enter into debts or credit situations, and the men in their lives would be responsible to pay them. Wow, that's a contextual bit of information that not only has she omitted, but sort of changes the situation completely. Well, it just does a 180 on the situation. Because if you're a woman, you have the privilege of not having to pay your debts. They are automatically assigned to a male relative, most likely your husband. Wow, that's quite the thing. Yeah,
no, it's quite the privilege. And it's you sort of look at all of that, and I absolutely agree that women should have been able to should not have had to face discrimination from bankers and lenders and stuff like that. But I think it would be interesting, because there were polls taken, of women on women's suffrage, right? And so in Minnesota, when they did their polls, as late as 1909, 75% of women were against it because they did not want male responsibilities. But if they had bothered to take polls in the 1910s, as to whether women wanted to be responsible for their own debts, just by and large, on the whole. I'm sure there were some feminists who would have said, yes, we want to be responsible for our own debts, but I'm almost positive that the majority of women would have said no. And on top of that, here's one of the most interesting things is a married woman could go to any merchant in her neighborhood, right? You know, because she's the one who is expected to be running the household, right? And she would make purchases, and she would essentially say, bill this to my husband, put this on my husband's tab. And if she was overspending, if she was spending more money than he could earn and just frivolously buying shoes and dresses, he would actually have to go to each individual store and tell the owner of that store, please don't give my wife any purchases on credit because I can't afford it. So he would actually have to, can you imagine having to go to every single store within walking distance of your home and say, don't sell anything to my wife unless she has actual money?
Well, what I get, what is incredible is you're right. It's entirely possible that the women involved in this didn't want to give up the very significant benefit of having a male relative responsible for their debts. And that is what they gave up, because they must have known that if feminism removed this or made it illegal for women to be declined debt, that protection or that benefit that women had, that their debt would automatically be assigned to the nearest male relative, would eventually be challenged in court and removed. So it's not like, you cannot look at this situation and say women were being treated badly. They were being treated differently, and in some ways, I think that men were being treated worse.
Oh yeah, can you imagine if you married a woman and she had, like, I don't know, say these days, say you marry a woman, you know, she's graduated, PhD in something, and she just neglects to tell you that she's got like $85,000 worth of student debt, right? She just forgot to tell you, and you marry her, and now all that debt is yours. It's your responsibility, and she can just quit her job, and you have to pay for her, and you also have to pay her debt, and you have to pay for everything.
And the thing is that it makes perfect sense in that scenario that if a woman's male relatives are ultimately going to be responsible for her debt, it's really understandable why legally they were expected to sign off on it.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes a lot more sense.
Well,
it seems a lot less unequal.
Oh, could you imagine giving, you know, like my 13-year-old goes to the bank, he says, I want a credit card, right? And they give him a credit card, but I'm the one without my permission, right? And then I'm the one responsible for whatever he spends on it.
Mm-hmm.
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 So,
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yep. All right, moving on.
What is this inane business?
Interesting question is coming from Frequent Stuff Mom Never Told You commenter Satanist Sin. Can you make a list of feminism's accomplishments? I can't think of anything other than stuff my grandmother did. Please help. This is a question that's so often asked in a trollish kind of way, as if feminism, capital F, this like feminist corporation should be issuing an annual report every year.
Oh, well, that would actually be nice.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind
I think we could have some accountability.
Yeah,
we certainly seem to be capable of acting as almost an organized force.
Yeah, transparency, accountability. You know, here's what we did this year. You know, and here's what we did last year. That'd be great. I would love that.
Considering that they are saying that they are they're bringing about equality, but nobody can judge them on it. Mm-hmm. It's like having a government organ or a government branch, like road repair. I've said this before, so bear with me, people who've heard it before. But it's like having this government service like road repair, and you're looking at a pothole outside your house, and you like call them up and say, "Hey, there's a pothole. You're not repairing the roads," and they say, "Well, we will be the judge of what a repaired road is."
Mm-hmm.
That pothole, you bringing attention to that pothole means that you're against road repair.
Yeah.
And feminism wants to say it's for equality, but nobody can judge them on those terms.
No.
You know, and if we do judge them on those terms, we're against equality.
Yeah. Oh, of course we are.
Zero accountability. So yeah, it would be nice, especially since feminism seems to think that women are responsible for tithing to feminism. It would be nice that it gives an accounting of what exactly we get from it, aside from these sort of abusive guilt trips.
Vague platitudes and yeah.
Yeah, you owe us, bitch.
Because equality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it is still relevant. But Satan is sin, I feel like if I say Satan is sin 7 times, you will appear. And I am way over my limit. I am going to entertain your request for a list of feminism's accomplishments. All I had to do, really, to find enough material to talk about for this one video is go back and offer a snapshot of some of the high points, just some of the high points of what feminism has accomplished only since 2012. First and most obvious,
Jesus Christ,
continues to open.
Can you stop for a second? I'm going to make a prognostication with my little ball of, or like, what is that thing called?
Magic 8 ball?
No, not a magic 8 ball, like a gypsy
crystal ball.
Crystal ball. I'm going to make this prediction. She's not going to include anything that feminism has done against men.
Well, she's certainly not going to frame it that way. I can guarantee you that.
Well, for example, she's not going to include the feminist efforts against equal parenting in Canada.
Well, of course.
She's not going to include Mary Koss influencing the Center of Disease Controls to erase male victims of rape. So she's not going to include that.
No,
I just have a feeling.
Oh, she's not going to include the Florida chapter of NOW convincing the governor of Florida to veto alimony reform legislation that had massive public support and had passed both houses with overwhelming bipartisan support.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's not going to do that, but
because she's not going to point out the areas in which feminism advocates for the benefit of women to the detriment of men.
No.
But let's see. Maybe we're wrong.
Maybe. All right, let's go.
For women that have previously been closed, whether due to cultural, institutional, or even legal factors. In 2012, a record number of women were elected to Congress, and the same.
How did feminism do that? We don't have women-only shortlists in the United States. There is no affirmative action in place for female candidates in the United States like there is in the UK. You could maybe take credit for female MPs in the UK because feminism actually pushed really hard for women-only shortlists and to run female candidates in completely uncontested ridings and all kinds of stuff like that. But the United States is more of a meritocracy still in terms of elections. And I'm sorry, honey, but there was a research team that wrote a book called Gender as a Political Factor or something like that. And they found that when they looked at elections at every level of government for decades, they found that there was no statistically significant difference in the likelihood of being elected, whether you're a man or a woman. Didn't matter whether you were a female newbie running against a male incumbent, whether you were a female running against a male and you were both new and in the riding. Didn't matter whether you were a female incumbent and there was a male running against you. Did not matter. Men and women had the exact same chance of getting elected statistically.
So
right?
essentially,
for the last 30 years. So essentially, feminism didn't do anything since 2012 in the United States.
No, it didn't. What this person is doing is individual women have made the choice to run the gamut of political opinion, like to go out there and become politicians. Individual women have decided to put their lives on the line. Yeah, I mean, not in a physical sense, but in a social sense, and go out and brave the uncertainties. But here's feminism
Taking credit.
ready to take the credit away from them.
Yep.
And ready to say, no, that was actually feminism. No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was those individual women having the courage to go out there and step up and have their voices heard.
Yeah, in an extremely risky arena where, you know, you put all this money, all this effort, all this time, all these weeks on the campaign trail where you're not seeing your kids, all of those things, right? You're doing all of that, and it might come to nothing. It might come to absolutely nothing. But that's an amazing thing for anybody to do.
Yep. And furthermore, I think feminism's only real input into the entire process is to tell women, don't do it because you're oppressed, because you won't get anywhere, because or to tell women that they face greater obstacles than men. Yeah. So that's feminism's input in the matter. So in other words, the number of women who have entered into politics is despite feminism, not because of feminism. It's despite the fact that feminism puts a bunch of goddamn weights on them that they have to carry in this in a political marathon because they think they're behind the 8 ball, or that people won't listen to them, or they don't have a fighting chance. This is all what feminism tells women who want to become politicians. So despite the handicap that feminism gives women, they still went in and they still did it. And feminism is right there to take the fucking credit.
Yep.
For something
Yep. All right, moving on.
Thing happened in Canadian Parliament a few weeks ago. Then in 2013, the US military opened up combat roles to women for the first time. Talk about breaking down some pretty historic reservations about places where women should and should not go.
Okay, I'm willing to give them this. I'm willing to give them this, that feminism has been pushing for this. And we'll just see how well it works out. Because there's a significant amount of evidence, even now, that when it comes to just strict objective measures of performance, mixed male-female groups perform much more poorly than all male groups in combat scenarios. And it's not just because women are physically weaker and less capable. It's also because, and it's not just because the men often see their female comrades as more important than the mission. It is, that chivalry that gets in the way. It is also because the existence of women in the dynamic changes the way the men interact with each other, and it interferes with the cohesiveness of the unit. So essentially, if I had my druthers, I would say, okay, so have all female combat units, right? Have all of the women in combat be in their own units, sex segregated, whatever, and let's give them a try.
And the other thing is that this isn't really to want women in combat. First of all, look at it in terms of do the women actually benefit the army? Not does the army benefit the women? Feminism doesn't do that, or the military benefit the women. Feminism doesn't look at women in terms of how they can benefit the military. They just look at this as like almost like a talking point or just a PR stunt. And it's
the boys have this, we want it too. They don't realize that it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country.
Was it feminists who got women into the military?
They pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed.
Or well, you know what? Then give it to them. At least they're pushing women into combat roles. That will mean that if we have a draft, there will be no fucking reason not to draft women.
There you go.
All right.
There was never a reason to not draft women. There are other roles in the military, that don't involve direct.
Well,
combat.
Congratulations, feminists! You have now corrected what you did during World War II, when there was an actual legitimate draft, because feminists opposed the draft in World War II successfully as well. And they posed it on the grounds that this kind of a situation shouldn't be forced on women. So thank you, feminism. You've corrected the problem you created in the first place.
Well, they haven't, because it's the National Coalition for Men that's launched a constitutional challenge of the draft. So.
Oh, okay. Well, so they've made it so women can go into combat if they want, but men still have to.
Yeah. No, this is what it's always been. That women should have the rights and privileges of men, but not the obligations. So there you go. But we'll see. We'll see how well female soldiers in combat positions work out for their fellow soldiers. We'll see whether feminism decides in 10 years after the entire thing goes Pete Tong, whether they're going to say, well, it wasn't feminists that did that. It was the government, which is a patriarchy.
Okay. Well, the other thing is that they're still not looking at this in the way that I would want them. When I was a kid, I identified as a feminist because of the issue of the draft. And I thought that if women had the rights of citizenship, they should have the responsibility of citizenship. I have been waiting since I was like 14 for feminism to actually bring about this idea of civic responsibility for women. And I'm still fucking waiting. The moment that feminism starts to talk about women's civic responsibility, women's responsibility to the societies they have a say in, I don't know if I call myself a feminist, but I'll stop. I won't do anything. I'll just be like, thank you. I'll thank you for that. But this isn't it.
Yeah, no.
You're giving women the option to go into combat, but you are still not looking at the issue in terms of women serving the societies that they belong to, which is what I want to see.
Yeah.
I want to see that conversation happen.
There you go.
So maybe a half point.
Sorry?
A half point for this one.
Yeah, no, I have a point, and we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, when it blows up, and everybody agrees that it was a bad idea, whether they'll try and completely abdicate their responsibility for it and say, well, that wasn't feminism that did that, because that seems to be what they want to do with the tender years doctrine and what they want to do with this, that, and the other. That's what they want to do. Alimony is a patriarchal construct. Yeah, until Florida now decides that they really like the idea of alimony. Then it's a feminist thing. So, but feminists have nothing to do with perpetuating. So, yeah, that's why I like the idea of this accountability sheet. Like, feminism is a corporation. Well, if you're going to consider yourself an organized entity that can take praise, you should also take blame. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Women earn less money than men do. In 2014, 37% of women were the breadwinners in their household.
Oh,
and a significant proportion of them were on welfare.
really?
Yes. Single parent mother households on welfare count in this 37%.
Well, what I wanted to point out is exempting the single mother households on welfare. Once again, this feminist is saying that feminism can take credit for the individual choices of individual women.
Yeah. And then on top of that, what do I see? What did I see I forget whether it was the Telegraph or the Daily Mail or the freaking Guardian or some shit. It was some British newspaper, crowing, sort of half crowing and half lamenting this situation, because it's about 40% in the UK now of households being the sole or primary breadwinner is the wife / mother, right? And it was saying that this is great. However, right, so many of these women are feeling super stressed out and super put upon, and they aren't coping with it very well, and they need more support and they need more help, right, to be able to fulfill their roles as the sole or primary breadwinners. They need all of this social support and stuff, right? I'm sorry, I thought that was called male patriarchal privilege back when that burden was entirely on men, right? I thought that was what that was. right? And now you have women who are in the role that men were in all through history, and they're complaining that it's stressful and that it's a huge burden, and and all of the it's just so difficult, and it's so awful. It's really almost frightening to think that you're the only thing standing in the way of your family living in a cardboard box, right? Use your ability to keep that job and bring in the money. Oh, it's such a burden. It's such an obligation. It's so stressful, right? No, baby, that's privilege.
Yeah. Okay.
Fuck me.
Which is up from just 4% in 1970. In terms of men, that whole women being allowed to be breadwinners.
I just want to say, up from 4% in 1970. 1970 was about the time that the war on poverty really kicked in, and you had huge amounts of women raising their children without fathers on the government dole, right? That was when that started. So now all of these women who are on WIC and food stamps and subsidized housing and subsidized childcare and welfare and all of the rest, they are all considered in this 37%. And a significant portion of them are living under the poverty line.
I'm just going to tell you to let's get going.
Thing opens up a lot more opportunities for you to define and choose what kind of career path and family role works best for you and your family. Second,
what about the husband or the partner, the male partner?
Oh, you don't need one.
Or also he just is obligated to deal with your choices.
You're just supposed to go along with it. No, she said what's best for you and your family. And you know what? When you have men and women living together in a marriage or a common law marriage with children, what works best, according to the broader consensus of what people do, is that the men will fall into the role of the primary breadwinner. The woman will work part-time to supplement the family income and do more stuff around the house. That's just how people tend to arrange things when they're married and they have kids. That's still the norm. It's still absolutely 100% the typical arrangement across the board, with very, very few exceptions. And yes, you can say the number of stay-at-home dads has doubled in the last decade, right? It's doubled from like 4% to 8% or something like that. And a lot of those men are not choosing to stay home. They're unemployed.
Well, the other thing is that, and I would disagree that necessarily that's the best approach, but that's my own opinion. And
this is just what seems to work for people.
Yeah, fair enough. But in the situation, I don't know if it's because men really have as much of a choice, because I remember reading on Father's Days a couple of years ago what a man had to go through to become an equal parent. He had to wait till his mid-30s to find a woman who would accept the fact that he essentially said, no, I'm going to be part-time. If I have a child, I'm going to be equally involved in the raising of that child. So he had to wait a long time to find a woman who would even agree to it. And he had to continually assert his right to equal parenthood throughout the entire relationship. So unless you got a guy who's got a spine made of titanium, you're going to end up with the result of whatever women want, which generally is to stay at home, have the leisure time, take care of their kids, because that's a more enjoyable activity than being hounded by a boss in the workplace. Yeah. So, I mean, the real question is this an effect of men or women? And it's an effect of women, because if you look at what the situation is for men who want to stay at home and be equal parents, they have to actually fight against the natural inclination of women, or the ability for women to basically structure their lives in whatever way they want. Mm-hmm. And it's the same. It follows directly from that, what we spoke about, men being obligated to pay for women's debts prior to the 1960s. Yeah. This idea that men underwrite women's lives is ingrained in our culture.
Well,
And
it's called supporting your wife and family, right? And you support them you try to provide them the lifestyle that they want.
And the other thing is that this may be very recent. This may be quite recent in our evolutionary history and also in our social history, because prior to the 1950s, when there was a significant leisure time at the home, not only would women be spending most of their time working in the home, men would also have a closer relationship with children as their mentors.
Yeah.
So this may also be quite artificial, that children don't have as much contact with their parents in these generations, or with their fathers.
It's a sort of a side effect of the suburbanization of,
and also industrialization.
Yeah, modern life. So it's not our natural state. Our natural state is particularly like agricultural life, right? The husband ventures further into the field, right, to cut the grain or whatever with his boys, and the wife, works in the house in the yard with the girls, and the father is sort of always there as a role model for all of his children, right? He doesn't just go out 10 miles away from where he lives and then come home at the end of the day and put his feet up. That's not how farms work. So, and that was the sort of the standard of how people lived, was that you essentially had both parents in the home to at least some degree, available to their kids. So,
yeah.
And their kids didn't go off and spend, 6-7 hours a day outside of their parents' care either.
Yeah. Well, they didn't necessarily get educated in the way that we think of education now, but they probably would have had a lot more emotional support in that sense. Well, let's
okay, moving on.
Has also paved the way for mandating new protections for some of the most vulnerable members of our society. In 2013, 39 states passed laws to combat sex and labor.
Oh, I thought she was going to say children, but
yeah. Well,
this
includes children, but
assist survivors. 94% of people are female.
Wait a second. Where's that 94% statistic coming from? Everything I've looked at is youth sex work is at least equal, male and female.
Yeah.
Like where's that 94% coming from? And if you're talking about adult sex workers, yeah, maybe there is a higher skew to women, but these are adult women. They're not the most vulnerable members of our fucking society. And incidentally, how many of these sex trafficking laws actually net women, female sole proprietorships who are moving across state lines in order to ply their trade? Like, what is the effect of these sex trafficking laws on actual prostitutes? I'd like to hear that from a prostitute, not from.
I know one case that occurred in Maryland. It was a couple of prostitutes who they were in, oh God, Chicago, and they, they were feeling some heat over some of their behavior in Chicago, and they wanted to get out of town, and they decided they wanted to go to Baltimore. And so they convinced a male acquaintance, I guess, who they knew, who was driving out to Baltimore, to give them a ride out there. They went out to Baltimore. They started engaging in prostitution there. They were busted. And when the cops discovered that they were from Chicago and they had crossed state lines, the cops all of a sudden started asking about, trafficking and who brought you here and the whole bit. So this guy who'd done nothing more than give these two ladies a ride is now essentially considered a sex trafficker. And these women are now no longer considered prostitutes or criminals. They're actually considered victims. And of course, they're going to say, oh yeah, we were trafficked, because it gets them out of trouble, right? That was a single case that was brought to my attention by Michael Parrott of an organization called Victims of Immigration Fraud, right? So he's essentially saying a lot of these cases of sex trafficking involve prostitutes who are transient by nature because what they're doing is illegal, and so they move from place to place often on a fairly regular basis to avoid getting into trouble. And if anybody helps facilitate them moving, right, those people are now sex traffickers.
Jesus Christ. And the war against their own populace continues. The government war against us continues. Thank you, feminism. Thank you. Actually, you know what? Thank you, feminism. You're making it harder to live.
Yeah. Harder for sex workers to actually have jobs, have safety on their jobs, and making it incentivizing them, implicating people who are innocent, essentially.
And also,
sex traffickers.
In this very video, feminism is rendering invisible half of. I'm not going to look at adult sex workers because I don't know the statistics on adult sex workers, but half of underage and juvenile sex workers invisible by not recognizing the male ones.
Yeah.
So congratulations, feminism. Not only are you making prostitutes' lives miserable, not only are you giving the government the ability to prosecute people who are completely innocent of a crime, who simply just help a prostitute move her house from like, I don't know, maybe she's a high class call girl. And she asks a friend, "Can you help me move? Like, can you drive the U-Haul? Can you help me drive the?" And suddenly he's a sex trafficker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And you're making regular citizens' lives harder. You're doing nothing to help boys and girls who are actually on the streets. Your interventions do nothing to help them. Yeah. Nothing. So you are continuing to manufacture the problem you supposedly are saying you're going to fix. Congratulations. Thank you, feminism. Please fuck off.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Feminism accomplishment number 3, raising awareness and accountability, and also passing new laws regarding sexual access to each other's bodies. In 2014.
Let her finish the thought.
Okay.
The White House established its task force to protect students from sexual assault, and California became the very first state to pass a law codifying what affirmative sexual consent means.
All right. Yes, we can stop now. I can feel the rage building. So go ahead, Karen. You can take this.
Okay. Number one. Students are at a lower risk than the general population of their same age peers for sexual assault. Why are we singling out students in this way?
Because they're rich white girls.
Oh, fuck. Okay, you're right. Okay, never mind.
Oh God! God forbid we deal with the problems of, for example, trans women or women of color in ghettos who have the highest rate of sexual assault.
Yeah, no.
God forbid.
Why would we do that? Why would we fucking do that?
No, we need to plaster a pretty little white girl on a poster. I mean, it's not like these so-called rape advocates are actually very callously selecting for what plays, what sells.
Yeah.
In terms of their advocacy. They want to be able to plaster the most attractive, the most appealing, and most cared for population on their posters in order. It's not like they're actually pimping these victims. They're using the prettiest rape victims.
Missing white girl syndrome.
They're using the prettiest fucking rape victims, the most appealing fucking rape victims. And even though they're the least likely, pretty, white, wealthy college girls are the least likely to be raped in their particular age group. Even though they're the least likely to be raped, they're the most sellable. So who do we focus on?
Yeah.
Who do we fucking... And then they turn around and they say shit about objectification. Well, you are objectifying yourselves. That you really think that it isn't a coincidence that you're focusing on the rape victims who most look like fucking fashion models?
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
And here's the thing too, right? You know, that recent study that came out of a survey of 27 different colleges that had a a 19% response rate, although a lot of people are like, well, 150,000 students responded. Yeah, well, but it was still only 19% of them who had been given the survey bothered to respond. But one of the things about that survey was that it actually talked about barriers to reporting. The number one barrier that women cited, that women who were deemed to have been victims of sexual assault or sexual misconduct or sexual harassment or forced penetration, rape, all of that, right? The number one barrier to them reporting was their own sense that it wasn't important enough to report. That what happened to them was just not a big enough deal to report, even though the majority who didn't report said they thought that their colleges were dealing with it adequately, that the way colleges deal with reports was adequate, right? They still didn't report because they didn't feel like what had happened to them was that big of a deal. Okay, but we've got this epidemic of like supermondo traumatizing rape going on. And I'm not just talking about like a majority, like 51%. I'm talking about 90%, 92%, 85%, 80%, 78%, right? Numbers like that. Thought that the incident was not important enough to report. Okay, that survey was based entirely on the concept of affirmative consent. It includes actual rape, actual sexual misconduct, actual sexual assault, things that everybody would think of as sexual assault. And it also includes anything that happened where the woman didn't get out her fucking pom-poms and beg, because that's the only way the guy can know she's really actually into it. Okay? According to affirmative consent laws. And then on top of all of that, affirmative consent laws have now been tested in court, not the laws, but the actual concept of it has been tested in court because some universities have been using it for a while, more than once. And the entire concept of it has failed on the grounds of constitutional validity repeatedly, because it reverses the burden of proof. It reverses the burden of proof. Now, think about it. I'm your neighbor, Kristen. Okay, I'm your neighbor, and I'm going to report you to the police for beating your child or something, and you have to prove you didn't. I don't have to prove you did. The cops don't have to prove you did. The prosecutor doesn't have to prove you did. The court of law doesn't have to prove you did. You have to prove you didn't do it. Do you think that would be okay? Do you think that's a legal standard that should actually be written into legislation, that should be codified? Do you think having to prove yourself innocent is something that should exist in a modern Western democracy? What if the government decided, you know what, you're selling secrets to the Russians, Kristen? Prove you didn't.
Yeah. Thank you, feminism, for eroding due process laws and inverting the burden of proof in criminal trials.
Woohoo!
Fuck you! Sorry, I'm just like, okay, so far, what has feminism done? Feminism, okay, fair enough. Credit. Men shouldn't have to pay for women's credit. It indirectly made it so that men don't have to actually take responsibility for their female relatives' credit. That's decent. It has also challenged women going into combat. Hopefully that will that will take away a male-only draft. Although they still aren't talking about women's civic responsibilities. They aren't talking about the military in terms of women's civic responsibilities as citizens to serve the countries that they have a say in. But okay, fair enough. And then we have two complete strikeouts by feminism. one incident where feminism is taking responsibility when it is actually credit going to the individual women who have the courage to step forward as politicians, or the individual women who have the courage to step forward as primary breadwinners of their families. Is that takes courage too. And that is an individual choice. It has nothing the fuck to do with feminism. And in feminism,
not even a choice, but
yeah, sometimes it's not even a choice, but it has fuck all to do with feminism. And in the political case, feminism actually is handicapping women by not telling them the truth, that when they run for politics, they have an equal chance of representation as men. So feminism has struck out on women going into politics, first of all, because it's not feminism's responsibility. It's an individual woman's choice. It struck out on breadwinners because, once again, it's either individual choice or circumstance for a woman to step up. And in many cases, she's not stepping up. She's on welfare. And now they've struck out on the sex trafficking laws that are actually making prostitutes' lives more difficult, not easier, and are implicating innocent people as sex traffickers, and are completely ignoring the vulnerable populations that we should be trying to help, namely children in sex work. And then, what was this late one? I'm almost forgotten. Oh, yes, the enthusiastic consent, which is eroding due process laws and reversing the burden of, can we fucking get rid of feminism already? Like, how much more shit does it have to do and take credit for which it has no right to take credit for?
Yeah, well, and the things that it has the right to take credit for, like this affirmative consent thing, are abominable. Every single right-thinking person should be looking at this law, applying it to any other crime, and saying, would I want to have to prove my innocence in a court of law? Would I want the burden of proof to be on me if I was accused of robbery or embezzling?
Of course. Well, they don't see that they think it'll just stick with the rape laws. No, it won't.
I know. They think it'll just stick with laws that negatively, disproportionately affect men.
It won't.
You know, and they don't think that it will ever occur that a man will ever accuse a woman under this legal standard. And personally, I think that every drunk guy who hooks up at a frat party should just make a preemptive accusation the morning after.
Hell, they don't even have to do preemptive accusations. And guys, if you actually have felt like you've been raped, that would just flood these centers. Like, if men actually started to stand up and say, you know what, I'm not going to tolerate this violation upon my person.
Yeah, I fucking woke up next to Coyote Ugly. I would have fucked her if I hadn't been blackout drunk.
Or even my friends told me I was unconscious and she mounted me. Those scenarios.
Yeah.
Start reporting those scenarios. There would be a flood overnight of reports of men legitimately being raped to these college campuses. Yeah, start wiping the smug, self-satisfied moral superiority off of these women's faces.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus fucking Christ. All right.
I still remember. I still remember reading, it was the NCHERM, the National something or other for Higher Education Risk Management. I remember them releasing a handbook where they gave a bunch of scenarios. They listed off a bunch of scenarios of what would constitute sexual misconduct according to the university, this university. And in one of those scenarios, it tells the story about this guy and this girl, and they met at this party, and then they were dancing, and like she grabbed his junk, and then they kind of danced close and dirty, and then they went up to his place, and then he pressured her into giving him a hand job, and so he's now guilty of sexual misconduct. She didn't ask his permission to grab his junk. The entire fucking story in this book started with her sexually assaulting him. In the handbook that described him as being the one guilty of sexual misconduct. Because we just don't see those things that women do as sexual misconduct. We see them as harmless. Anyhow.
Yes. Yeah, I know. It's the dishonesty here is just fuck.
All
I
right.
mean, well, think of the good they could have done instead of pursuing this yes means yes bullshit, eroding due process and reversing the burden of proof. If they just recognize male victims,
Yeah.
you can think about the universal, like, in fact, what from my reading, and I'm afraid I've tried so hard to find the source of this. These "Don't Be That Guy" campaigns and this yes means yes, all of this shit that feminists puts out does nothing to change the rate of sexual assault. But one thing would, according to this one study that I cannot find again, so I no longer have freaking access, but whatever. The one thing that would really change, or really changes people's attitudes, sexual attitudes, is recognizing male victims. That's the one fucking thing. And they will not fucking do it. They'd rather pursue everything, fucking other thing, every other blind alley and dead end that will do nothing to change people's attitudes. If you want to do that, they will pursue every single fucking snape down a hole, but that one.
Yep.
So once again, it seems more like it seems more like a con, and they just want the prettiest rape victims to put on their posters and rake in the moolah like goddamn pimps.
Yep.
All right.
Moving on.
The U.S. Justice Department launched a pilot program to allow Native American reservations to try non-Native Americans for crimes of domestic violence and assault for the very first time. And
Okay, that one actually, that was one of the things that was discussed at the NOW conference that I attended, and I have to say that it's problematic. It's problematic only because there are two justice systems at work here. That in the U.S. on reservation, that is considered to be a separate nation with a separate government. So they can apply whatever rules they want. They can enforce their laws however they want, and people who are non-natives who go onto reservations and commit crimes have been often prevented from being brought to justice in the past because we have these two parallel justice systems, not because nobody wanted to bring them to justice, but because the non-native people were not subject to justice in that particular parallel justice system, and our justice system did not have, or the U.S. justice system did not have jurisdiction to prosecute someone who had a white person or whatever who had committed a crime on a native reservation, right? The entire fucking thing is just a clusterfuck because there are two parallel justice systems, and I don't think that tweaking these two parallel justice systems is the solution to that. The solution is to integrate the two systems so that people who go and commit crimes on reservations where they don't live and they're not residents can be brought to justice within the wider body of the U.S. judiciary. That's as far as I'm concerned. This was not an issue. This was not a feminist issue, and it should never have been made a feminist issue.
Okay, and to be honest, it sounds like something that's nuanced and requires a very expert opinion, and I don't have that, so I'm just gonna say let's move to the next point.
Yeah.
Feminism's recent accomplishments aren't just about improving the lives of women. It's also about redefining what's acceptable for men as
Redefining what's acceptable for men.
Okay, let's see if they can deliver on that promise. So let's let her continue.
well. In 2014, a former CNN reporter named Josh Leves won an EEOC case brought against Time Warner regarding his paltry paternity leave. That media giant changed its parental leave policy, granting 6 weeks paid leave to all new parents, not...
All right. How is feminism responsible for that?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they wrote an amicus brief.
Did what? Okay, I don't know any specifics about that, but did a feminist legal organization write something up? Did they give him money for the case? Did anyone associated with feminism do anything in that? I mean, actually, and this is the funny thing that I always seem to get with feminists. Like a while back, and Jonathan McIntosh said, male domestic violence is, part of the patriarchy, fight patriarchy. I'm like, why don't you just give men money for shelter, or just give, create shelters for men who are victims of feminism? Really has this problem.
Yeah, why do we need to defeat the patriarchy first?
Yeah, it has this sort of vague, wibbly wobbly problem in which it just says shit like this. It doesn't give concretes. How did feminism help this amicus brief? Like, how does fighting patriarchy give men shelters? How? Like, how does tilting at these feminist windmills do a damn fucking thing?
Yeah. Honestly, you can make the argument that in Sweden, right? In Sweden, feminists did really push for paternity leave. And then they decided that they had to enforce how people use their parental leave, because too many men were essentially going back to work 2 weeks later and transferring all of their paternity weeks to their wives, which meant that, because the feminists had wanted to bring in paternity leave to solve the pay gap issue, because they were smart enough to realize that taking a year off to have a kid, right, penalizes you in the workplace. So let's get men to take a year off as well, and then they'll be equally penalized and the wage gap will even out a little bit. Right. But that wasn't what people were doing with it. People were essentially, the men would, according to these men, they would sort of feel this almost irresistible urge to get back to work because they were falling behind. And so they would stay home for a couple of weeks. They would transfer all of their remaining weeks to their wives. Their wives would end up staying not home just for a year, but for now, like a year and 50 weeks, for almost 2 years, because they could afford it now, because they had this paternity leave that they could. So then the Swedish government had to restrict the amount of weeks that were transferable between the parties, right, in order to fix this. And then what happened was, men would still typically only take 2 weeks off. They'd transfer whatever transferable weeks they had, and they'd kiss the rest of them goodbye, because it wasn't worth it to them to fall behind at work, right? To stay home and use those weeks. So they would lose that money because they thought it was worth letting go, right? And would still give all of their transferable weeks to their wives, right? Who would then still take every single one of their transferable weeks and their own. And so essentially you have that. You can credit feminists with that, getting paternity leave for men in Sweden. But I just don't, unless this woman can actually say that this feminist foundation wrote an amicus brief in the case or whatever, or this feminist foundation donated to his cause, or they really rallied support, or, show me some links.
Show me some concretes.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily buying it. And frankly, 6 weeks of paid leave is pretty pathetic.
Well, the other thing, just to give a contrary opinion on the Sweden thing, you're not going to get men staying home taking care of their kids until you start challenging a lot of the attitudes towards fathership in society, and also the attitudes towards people taking time off to take care of their kids. Now, whether or not you want to do that's fine. I'm putting this out merely as an analysis of the situation. If you told fathers, your involvement will determine a lot of the success, the future success of your children, they might be more inclined to stay. But of course, if you do that, then you get into the problem.
The also sticky place.
Well,
single mothers.
Yeah, single mothers. that single mothers by choice, because then you start to recognize that single motherhood by choice is not a good idea.
It's not ideal.
No, it's not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. But so in order to actually really challenge that, you would have to start recognizing the significant contribution that men make to the success of their children. And I don't think feminism wants to do that.
You can't do that if you're still going to make sperm banks available to single women and give all
welfare policies that rely on a single woman removing the adult men from from her household. You can't.
Most of those welfare policies are gone now. Like one of the big problems is like, because I've heard people say that it's a myth that happens, and it is a myth that it happens. It's not a myth that it happened, however. And by the time the government or society or whatever realized that, oh, this is actually a problem, right? Being unwilling to pay a woman with children, if she had an able-bodied, employable man in her home, is actually breaking up families and making all kinds of other problems. By the time they realized that, it was too late. The cycle's been set in place, right? That you have this significant number of kids being raised without fathers, and then they go on to be more likely to do the same. And so it wasn't the policy. It isn't the policy now. Now an intact family can get welfare, right? But
the cycle is in place.
The cycle is in place of fatherlessness, and you have these girls who grow up without their dad in their lives, and they hit menarche earlier. Everything in their being is screaming to attach to a man, a protector and a provider, at the earliest age possible. So they're more likely to have kids as teenagers and all of these other things. And the boys have no idea what it's like to be a responsible male adult, because they've never had that example on a day-to-day basis in their lives.
If I were a dark Sith Lord, I would point out that this sounds a lot like vote farming. It sounds like a lot like almost an extension of slavery. And the other thing that they need to do something to reverse it. So why don't they actually make an incentive for intact families? Give them a little bit more welfare. Overall, or in the long run, if you incentivize intact families, having a father in the house will keep those kids. Generationally, the father will get those kids out of poverty for some reason, statistically. Just incentivizing an intact family, saying intact families get more money.
Yeah.
That would reverse this process, but they're not going to do that, I don't think.
No, they're not going to do it, because that would be unfairly targeting women for their choices, right? So
yeah, and so it's like this. We have this form of modern slavery, of modern vote farming, that's protected by feminism, because you can't criticize the choices of women, and you can't recognize the benefit of men to their families.
No.
And I'm like Karen's probably a lot more conservative than me. I'm a fucking liberal. Like, I'm crazy liberal. I'm anarchist, not communist, probably more like an anarcho-capitalist or not anarcho-capitalist. Yeah. And I recognize this shit.
Yeah, no, and I'm one of those people, like, I'm just,
I don't want to speak for you there, sorry.
No, I'm essentially like, when it comes to government interference in people's lives, I don't like it. Right. But I don't like it whether it's negative interference or positive interference. I don't like, because you have this situation where when the government incentivizes certain behaviors, those behaviors become more pervasive. Right. When the government says, okay, you made mistakes, you screwed up, let us fix it for you with money, so you don't have to pay the full consequences of your actions. That's just as much government interference in people's lives as saying, no, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just providing an incentive.
Well, in this case, My argument is if you're going to intervene in a problem, then at least intervene in a way that will reduce it.
Yeah.
Like I've had this argument with people who are more libertarian, and I totally understand getting government out of there. But if you are going to intervene. If you cannot stop the government from intervening in a problem, then make sure for fuck's sure that their intervention is scientifically based.
Yeah.
In some sense of the word, and I'll have some chance of actually reducing the problem, so we can get rid of the government intervention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but you never get rid of government interventions. They're perpetual.
New moms. Fifth huge feminist accomplishment, swiftly creating new laws regarding crimes that weren't even possible when suffragists and second waivers were protesting. Case in point, revenge porn.
Case in point. Case in point. Case in point. Case in point.
Okay. Calm down, grammar Nazi.
A slew of states have outlawed the distribution of so-called revenge or non-consensual pornography, and a federal bill is in the works. In the meantime, internet heavy hitters, including
Okay, all right. So, whatever.
Like, I don't understand how this is a feminist issue, because men and women engage in revenge porn.
Well, I guess they can say that this is a way that they've helped men.
Yeah, just kind of inadvertently. One of the interesting differences between men and women who post revenge porn is that when men post revenge porn, they post it to revenge porn sites where you have to go out of your way to, find the revenge porn at the revenge porn website. When women post revenge porn, they post it on Facebook.
Ugh.
They post it to everybody they and the person they're attacking knows. So now that person knows that person's grandmother knows what their O-face looks like.
Yeah, but did feminism actually? Oh, they probably did lobby for this.
I'm sure they did.
All right.
But I'm sure
revenge porn illegal.
I'm sure they didn't do it for the benefit of men.
Before challenging Mary Koss, erasing victims of male victims of female sexual aggressors, before actually protecting male rape victims, you got revenge porn laws passed. Congratulations.
Yeah, I know.
Your priorities are fucked.
You can be guaranteed they didn't do it for Anthony Weiner. So there you go. Or Hulk Hogan. Or any of those guys. Justin Bieber. Didn't do it for him.
Twitter and Google have all established anti-revenge porn policies. And even though the gender wage gap hasn't closed across the board, feminism is saving women money, honey. In Canada, for instance, in July 2015, the so-called tampon tax, or federal tax on menstrual hygiene products, was removed.
Actually, I think that's a good thing.
I don't think it's really that important, but sure.
It's not that important. It's a 5% federal tax. But I can see their point. I can absolutely see their point. This is something that is a necessity. It is, food is not taxable, GST does not apply to food, does not apply to clothes for, and school supplies for young kids. Does not apply to, all kinds of things that are considered to be necessities. And so I can absolutely see this one. I am willing to give feminism credit for this.
Well, did they actually do this though?
I'm pretty sure they did this, because this was one of those things that feminists have been bitching about for ages and ages and ages. And I'm sure that they are the ones who managed to actually get the federal tax removed from tampons and
right. Well, so fair enough. Men still don't have domestic violence shelters. They have absolutely no legal or social recourse when they're raped. They lose their children at alarming rates. They commit suicide at 4 times the rate of women. Yeah, but tampons don't have taxes.
Yeah, so I think and it wasn't a huge tax either, right? It's not like my cigarettes just went up another $5 a fucking carton to $96 and change for 8.
But once again, I have to point out, feminism is all about giving women benefits, no matter what, never looking at how women can be civically responsible. adults.
Yeah. Although I wonder whether the free bleeders are going to have any excuse now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not like you're being taxed for those tampons. So, all right, moving on.
And thrown out like an old tampon. And a similar initiative is underway in the United States because seriously, paying more for tampons? More symbolically, feminism has also increasingly...
Wait. Okay, so paying more for tampons is horrible, but the fact that pharmaceutical or like medical companies make millions off of boys' foreskins.
Yeah, I know that's okay.
That's okay. I mean, even if you think that circumcision is okay, don't you think some of those boys might like a little fucking kickback from that?
Yeah.
And their tissues being removed, presumably against their will, considering how much little baby boys scream when you shove a knife into their genitals. I mean, it's you would assume that would be indication that you're doing it against their will. Maybe they would like a little bit of that money.
Yeah, I know, and I've heard that the actual end market value. So once one foreskin has been processed into all of the products that it can be processed into, it has a market value, sort of a end product value of about $100,000.
Okay. All right. So if there was anything like, let's just imagine. Oops. Echo. Suddenly.
Sorry.
I'm not sure how to stop that. Not even sure why it's happening.
Neither am I, because I haven't changed anything. I haven't done anything.
Okay.
I'll turn it down a little.
Okay. Well, in terms of oh, this is gonna be very distracting. Even if I'm gonna have to mute you.
Kate.
Even if, well, let's imagine that there was something that could be painlessly removed from a woman. Let's just take away the pain aspect of circumcision and whether or not it was mutilation. Let's say we could remove something that regrows from a woman painlessly, but then it was turned into $100,000 worth of material goods. What would feminism say about that? About women having the right to some part of that amount? And the funny thing is that foreskins don't regrow, and they are excruciatingly agonizing to remove. And yeah, and the end result gets sold. Parts of little boys' bodies are taken off and sold. Cut off them and sold. And they don't see a single dime of that money. But, tampon taxes.
Well, priorities, people.
Indeed.
Okay, I'm going back to the video. Can you unmute me, by the way? Is that possible for you to do?
No, but I think it fixed it.
Okay.
So we've learned something. We're advancing in our knowledge.
Okay.
Other human and civil rights movements seeking equality for all people, regardless of ethnicity, gender identity, or sexual orientation. Yes, I'm talking about Black Lives Matter, which was started by 3 queer Black women, Alicia Garza, Patricia Cullors, and Opal Tometi, and also about a really big thing that happened in the United States on June 26, 2015, which was gay marriage being legalized. Well, no, those were not the initiatives of feminists.
Good. All right. You just disproved your fucking self. Okay. Let's move. I don't want to touch Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, no, I'm not touching that.
That is off topic as far as I'm concerned. You guys can touch it in the comments, but that's.
It's not just off topic. It's like it's the poop.
It's
and
the
I
poop.
don't want to touch it.
Not because
not because Black lives don't matter, but because of all of the controversy surrounding it.
We deal with enough controversy. Sometimes we have to draw the line.
We're da 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 da. Can't touch that.
Yeah.
So, but
this other thing. So she just admits that it has nothing to do with feminism, but she's going to take credit for it anyway. Way to go.
So yeah, no, I'm glad that she didn't claim credit, but she's going to say, but feminism supported all of that.
Is important feminist work. So
what?
Didn't do it, but it's important feminist work.
It's like, okay, going back to the road repair analogy.
Yeah.
Let's just say I get fucking tired of talking to these individuals who say, or this government road repair service that says, oh yeah, we repair roads, but we decide whether or not a road needs to be repaired. And even though you have like a 5-foot fucking pothole in front of your house, we have decided that we've repaired that road. And you pointing it out is actually you being against road repair. And I go out there and I fucking repair the fucking pothole. Feminism then comes by and says, yes, we repaired this. No, you didn't. You didn't. You didn't. You didn't.
Yeah. No, one of the horrible things about feminism is that it's and I'm going to go back again to my my experience at the Now conference in Baltimore, and I was watching them amend their charter. And so everybody who was a member of Now got the opportunity to vote. I abstained because even though I was technically a member at the time, because I was given a membership, I was sold a membership just by signing up to attend this conference. I was signed up for a membership against my will. I didn't vote, but I was watching Ellie Smeal, who was. She was a former president of Now, and she was trying to amend the charter based on the war on women, right? The charter entry on the war on women, and she was saying essentially, I want to delete this passage that says women's rights and I want, or women's reproductive rights. And I want it to, let's change it to women's rights, LGBT rights, minority rights, and immigrant rights, and workers' rights, or something like that. And we're just going to include all of that under the rubric of this war on women, right? So she goes through, and all of these changes were, and then she says, and at the end of each clause, we want to add, and the war on women. And the war on women, and the war, and then she later says, we're just trying to put the war on women anywhere we can, right? It was like completely fucking cynical. It was completely like, yeah, no, we're actually going to just like put out our feminist pseudopod and suck all of these other issues like immigrant rights and LGBT rights under the rubric of the war on women. Now, immigrant rights are, anyone who argues against immigrant rights is part of the war on women. And then they'll take credit for anything good that happens, in terms of immigrant rights.
War on women rhetoric can be implicated in most of the atrocities of the human race.
Of course it can.
It's just a war on different women, war on the Aryan woman. Oh, we got to gas the Jews. War on the Southern white woman. Oh, we got to prevent black men from voting, etc.
War on Hutu women. Got to kill the.
Yeah, that this is the war on women rhetoric. If we removed that one fucking concept from the human race, we would probably be singing Kumbaya. And in our fucking orbital spaceships, as on the way to goddamn, I don't know, Alpha Centauri. But that's what we would be doing as a human species. We got rid of the fucking war on women rhetoric. We would already be colonizing other fucking solar systems. This is why we can't have nice things. This is it. This is why. War on fucking women. And the funny thing is that whenever the war on women shit is trotted out, believe me, women suffer too.
Yeah.
Hutu women.
Yeah.
Black women.
Jewish women.
All suffered when we trotted out the war on women rhetoric. And guess who's going to suffer with this fucking shit? I think it's going to be us peasant women, Karen.
I think so.
Because we're revolting.
Us Ukrainian peasants.
Yeah, because we're revolting. Well, I'm not. I'm more of a Dutch peasant, but I'm still as revolting.
you're fucking Dutch,
Yes.
that's it, Alison. I don't want anything more to do with you. All right. Moving on.
Staying in sin. I mean, feminism has been pretty busy. But now, dear viewers, that I've given you like this much of what feminism has accomplished, I'm really curious, cautiously, because this is YouTube, to know what that means to you. Let me know in the comments. And thanks everybody who watched and commented on last week's Ask Kristen video. Do doctors ignore women? Susan Miller.
What?
More women. You know, maybe, okay, and here's the thing, because there was somebody in the comment thread of this original video, and she was asking, why are women always cold? Why are women always cold? And the men that I know, they never complain of being cold. They're always warm enough, right? And I essentially said, the reason why women are predisposed to feel cold is because you shared for 200,000, 2 million years. You shared the exact same environment as much more vulnerable children who were much more vulnerable to cold, often through the Pleistocene in a very cold place where cold was the enemy, right? And that's why, right? And men are less likely to feel cold because they were depended on to go out and hunt the fucking mastodon and shit, right? And so if they were feeling cold all the time, it was a detriment to the survival of the children.
Am I reading this right? Have we done almost 3 hours?
No, I think we've done 1 or 2 maybe. But essentially I was like, because evolution made you more sensitive to discomfort, and therefore you're more willing to complain about it.
Alternatively, men are stigmatized when they complain. So
yeah, no, I don't think that that's the case. I think that men actually have certain ways in which the environment does not seem to impact them to the degree it does women. There's plenty of evidence that men will turn the heat down, women will turn the heat up, right? So the man is like, yeah, no, it's too warm in here. It's like I'm comfortable. I don't want to take off my pants, right? Turn the heat down. The woman's turning the heat up because she's too cold, right? That absolutely meshes with the environment of the Pleistocene, where cold was a killer of children, right? And women were pretty much always with their children, right? And
okay,
so
but you know what, Karen? I'm not going to argue this, but let's just get to the point. What happened when you pointed that out?
I actually, there was a fairly decent response. It was quite, like I did actually eventually, because I got challenged on it a little bit. I did eventually say, well, I wasn't being mean about it, because I was thinking about saying, and that's why women are more whiny than men, because they are more sensitive to discomfort than men are, and more likely to whine about it, because when they whine about being cold, then their kids are less likely to freaking die of freezing to death, right? So, but when men whine about being cold, their kids are more likely to die of starvation. So, it's essentially it's
yeah, but okay, I'm just trying to bring this back to the topic of how doctors ignore women.
Well, doctors might ignore women because women are fucking whiners.
Ah, okay, all right, okay.
Women whine about every little fucking thing, right? Here's the thing.
Look at us. We're sitting women whining.
Yeah, well, you know why doctors take men more seriously when men come in? Is because a man came in with an obviously dislocated thumb that obviously required medical attention. He didn't come in because he felt a little bit of an ache somewhere, right? That might go away in 2 days, right? He didn't come in over like pathetic little pissy things, right? He waited until he was like catastrophically injured, and that's when he came in. That's why doctors take men seriously. And they don't take women seriously, because women come in over every little fucking thing.
All right. Just a few. This reminds me of something. It reminds me of the feminist assertion that, and yes, Karen made a good point. Okay, people who think that I'm being dismissive of Karen. I had to put that out there, being a bit of an asshole. But I'll continue. This reminds me of something. Feminists assert that that men are more likely, like when men are being abused, or women who are abused are more likely to get jailed. No, they're not. They're probably more likely to only get called when the man is bleeding to death in the front lawn and she's running around naked with a knife screaming, "He deserved that!" You know, that's why they're more likely to get arrested when the police are called on women. Because when the police are called on women, the woman has done something so egregious and fucked up that it's unmistakable. Like, nobody can say, "Oh, well, well, they still try. They'll still just poke the guy with the foot and say, "Can you get up? Can you get up? Get the fuck up." Oh, well, he doesn't seem to be responding. And they'll kick him a little harder. And if he does get up from the pool of blood, they'll say, "Well, you're the primary aggressor." But you know, they'll do that. And, you know, this is hyperbole, but it's a hyperbole with a basis of truth.
Yeah.
Men who call the cops when they're being abused, from Denise Hines' survey, they are more likely to be arrested than their female abusers. The police will go and most likely do everything in their power to either not arrest the woman or arrest the man. Yeah. So when women get arrested, when somebody calls the cops and a woman gets arrested, and this apparently happens, it's because it's so egregious that there's no equivocation on the issue. And that's why she's more likely to get arrested.
Yeah, there's no way to explain away what she did.
And even so, if you look at the statistics, it's still a crapshoot that she'll get arrested or him. Yeah. And those cases just they don't show up on the feminist researchers' radar, because when he gets arrested, then it obviously goes into he was the abuser.
Yeah, he was guilty.
He was guilty. So those cases don't show up on their feminist radar. Anyway, so it's sort of a similar situation. Yeah. Women get ignored more because they whine more, and they're more likely to call the cops in domestic situations that they have instigated. They are the primary aggressors, or nothing really happened.
Yeah, nothing actually fucking happened, and they're calling the guy to teach him a lesson.
Yeah.
So I've heard that quite a bit, actually. I've even heard that from women who regretted what they did. Right? I just wanted to teach him a lesson. I just wanted to scare him.
And holy fuck.
I didn't want him to go to jail.
Okay, but we have a minute left. Do you think there's anything productive in this minute?
I don't know. Let's see.
It said, I had a doctor that I was seeing for period pain.
Okay, no, there's nothing productive. We're not going through your mailbag.
Right.
Sorry.
I think we're done. Especially like period pain.
Yeah, that's you know what? Use it. I channel that. I channel that shit. I make it productive. I do something with it. Period pain. Bring it on.
Yeah.
It's like people are like, why didn't you? No, I use the pain. I use it. It's my tool.
It's, honestly, I think every woman goes through this, and it's just like, you just, most of the time it's not crippling. Most of the time, for most women, it's not crippling. For most women, it's something that is just like a general pain in the ass for a day or two every month. And you won't like menopause any better. So
I'm sure I won't, but it's like, yeah, just use it. Channel the darkness. Channel the pain. Make it work for you. And if I have to be calm and collected, I'll take a painkiller. It's like, it's not really rocket science, at least on my part. I don't know. Maybe I've got that internalized misogynies that allows me to just be able to manage shit.
Yeah, well, or either that or like pampering is sexist, and therefore, you should never expect a feminist to actually take pills to,
whatever,
diminish your symptoms.
Okay, so do you want to do like a little bit of a recap before we go? Because I think we got about 10 minutes.
Sure. I'm going to mute this.
What the hell did, or were you getting an echo again?
I'm just going to mute this while I go and do something noisy for a second.
Okay. All right. So let me try to use my brains to remember what the fuck she attributed to feminism in order. Like I didn't write it down and I should have. But I think the first thing that she attributed to feminism was credit cards. So feminism allowed women to have credit cards about a decade after they were invented. And in a time when men, if a woman defaulted on her credit, the credit card company would just go to the nearest male relative and stick him with the bill. So yay, that's great. And then the second thing was exercise. No, exercise was what she said in the beginning. That we are allowed to exercise now without somebody saying, "Oh my God, your uterus is going to explode! Quickly, everybody, evacuate the blast radius and get a uterus a bomb squad in to make sure she doesn't blow." Okay, the second one I don't remember. The third one was yes means yes, I think. So laws that erode due process and reverse the burden of proof onto the accused from the accuser. So yeah, so things that are basically destroying our fundamental rights as human beings to a legal process that is reasonable. So that we can pin on feminism. Then she took credit for a bunch of stuff that was actually individual women's choices. And then she took credit for a legal battle that I don't think feminism had anything to do with. And then she took credit for more stuff and admitted that feminism didn't have anything to do with it, but she was going to take credit for it anyway as a feminist. All in all, definitely an effort on her part to prove something. Karen, are you back yet, or is it?
I'm back.
Okay, I'm like floundering here. I'm just like I don't know. What would you give her out of 10?
You know, I would give her
tampon tax.
Yeah, I would definitely give her the tampon tax. I would definitely give her affirmative consent.
But affirmative consent is like that's
yeah, no, it's egregious. It's not good. It's egregious and horrible.
So I mean, on the one hand, feminism has made it so that our sanitary products aren't taxed, but on the other hand, it's taking away our fundamental freedoms. So okay, well, let's throw it out to the viewers and the listeners.
And the sex trafficking thing, they've definitely had a lot to do with that, with criminalizing guys who are unfortunate enough to give a prostitute a ride across state lines, just as a favor. That guy's now a sex trafficker, and that woman is now a victim of him. So yeah, congratulations on that one. So yeah, you know, I'd have to give her like a 1 out of 10, just for the tampon tax thing, because that really was something that I think was, you know, I mean, like, I don't think it was important. I don't think it was an important issue, but I think that, you know, like the end result of it was, you know, it was okay. It was all right. It was actually like, oh yeah, they actually did something that was decent. And all the rest of it was either them taking credit for shit they didn't do, or them doing things that were really horrible. Yeah. Okay. So like, we can give them like a 1 on the scale of 10 for the tampon tax, and then on the scale of dictators and authoritarians and tyrants throughout the world, on 10 every time.
10 out of fucking 10 for the erosion of due process, you fucktards. 10 out of 10 on the what would be a good of the Kim Jong-un, or what the fuck did he say? What's his pronunciation? North Korea. Kim Jong-un. Yeah, 10 out of 10 on the Kim Jong-un. Just pronounce
Kim Jong-un scale.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 feminism. 10 out of fucking 10. All right.
So, there we go. We are well on our way to a totalitarian Orwellian police state.
And we can thank feminism for that. Thank you, feminism. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Okay, so if you guys enjoy this content, let's see if I can get that. Yep, I think it's working now. Please consider becoming our patron so that we can continue to bring you content like this and dissect feminist opinions just like this one. And feminists believe they're doing something good by removing people's due process. We're rather inclined to disagree with that. Thank you for getting rid of the tampon tax. I'm sure probably at some point it would have been gotten rid of anyway, but thank you. That's great. We would prefer that if you just kept our rights, though. Those rights, they're sort of meaningful to us. Anyway, so if you like our commentary, you want us to continue to dissect and rage against the fem-sheen. That didn't work, did it? The fem-machine? The feminarchy? The fem-fascism?
The femtriarchy.
The femtriarchy. If you want to continue to listen to us rage against the femtriarchy, please do point your browsers to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Every bit helps, and it also helps with our secret patriarchal projects that we have in the works. So thank you for listening. Yes, thank you for listening. And thank you, Karen. Your input and perspective is always appreciated. I'm never annoyed at you. I'm merely annoyed at the people that we are responding to. So don't worry.
I know. It's okay, Alison.
Okay, once again, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Go there and feed the badger.